Hello and welcome to Wiggle Room, the GESGB profile interviews. In Wiggle Room, I chat with interesting people from our industry about their careers, how they got to where they are now, and asking their opinion about past and current events. The intention is to hear a broad spectrum of viewpoints of our industry from a variety of people. These are obviously their comments and opinions, and in no way are we suggesting these are the views or the position of the GESGB. In Wiggle Room today, I welcome Mike Popham. Hello, Mike. Welcome to Wiggle Room.
Hello, glad to be here. Looking forward to our discussion.
Excellent. Right, let's go right back to the very start. Where did you grow up, and what did you want to be when you grew up?
Very good question. So I'm from the West Country. Grew up close to Cheddar. Most people know roughly where Cheddar is. So I grew up in the middle of nowhere in the West Country. Went to school in Bristol, and I didn't really have any direction as I was growing up. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. So I then went through school, decided chemistry was my favourite subject. So I did a degree in chemistry. Still wasn't sure after that what I was going to do. So I did a PhD in chemistry. Obviously, I was doubling down on chemistry. And at the end of that period, I was actually going to be a teacher, believe it or not. And I got accepted onto teacher training. I did a 6-month placement just to earn some money in business and decided actually I quite like business. So I decided not to get on the teaching route. But yeah, I was almost a teacher. And instead now I'm the CEO of a seismic company. So very, very unusual path.
Excellent. So I am going to take you back slightly there to your undergraduate. Where did you do your undergraduate degree?
Southampton University, and I loved every moment. It was at the time, and I think it still is. It was really good for chemistry, and that's probably not that interesting to most of the people listening. But it was also very good for kind of the social side of university. And actually, looking back, that's where I needed most development at that age. I think I was academically all right, but naive socially. So the social development side that university gave me was great. But yeah, really enjoyed it.
And your PhD was at Southampton. What was that in?
That was in, oh, now you're testing me. Basically, it was in the coordination chemistry of scandium, yttrium, and the lanthanide metals. I don't know how much of that makes sense to you, how much chemistry you remember. But basically, I was taking some metals, which some of the rare earth metals present around the world, and seeing can they be more useful than they are. So there's a series of metals on your periodic table which aren't used that much. And I thought, let's go and see if we can create some new chemical bonds to make them more useful, and mixed success. But I did make some novel bonds between scandium, yttrium, and what's called the pnictogens, which is another series of chemical. My PhD experience was it's a real grind. Like at that stage, I was a bit tongue in cheek when I wasn't sure. When I said I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I did want to do something in chemistry at that age. And the first year of the PhD was great because you're kind of working out what is it you really want to study, what's the design of experiments to test whatever your theory is, and you start doing it. And that was great fun. But then years 2 and 3 are just doing exactly the same thing, but tweaking one variable. And kind of you start going a bit, I rapidly lost the interest and decided I like research. I've always loved technology. That's been cool. But I love research, but actually hands-on research where every day you do the same thing and tweak one thing is not for me. So that was my big learning from my PhD.
And where did you do your teacher training?
Teacher training I was going to do in Bristol, but I never actually did it. So I got accepted, and then I ended up taking a 6-month placement at BAE Systems. So they used to be British Aerospace, now BAE Systems. And I was doing software testing just because they had a big, I'm not allowed to say too much about the project, but they had a big software project, needed people just to go in and test it. So my first, obviously I had jobs as a student, which weren't as professional. This was my first kind of proper professional job, and it was, software testing. So started there, did 6 months, just understanding what the system was meant to do, designing tests to see did it work, and pointing out to people when there were issues. So it's a good place to start. And although it doesn't sound that exciting, I kind of realized I could make a difference in business through that. So I was kind of, as I was looking around, it's probably the same in all big companies. I was looking around at who was doing what. I was like, if I was in charge, I'd change that and change that. And they started being receptive to some of these ideas. And I thought, this is quite a well-known company. If I can make a difference here, maybe I can make a difference somewhere else. And I quite enjoyed it. So decided to stay in business at that point. They made me an offer to stay, which I did. And I spent about 8 years there, 8 or 9 years, doing a range of things. So obviously software testing wasn't, well, not obviously, but that wasn't where I wanted to spend my career. So I got into engineering design, so designing new technologies, and did a range of roles. And I quite quickly centered in on what I love. So quite early on in that journey, I said, I'd like to end up in a senior position in a technology unit in a big company. That's what I thought, because I wasn't thinking startups. And I started looking at what kind of experience you need and collecting that experience early in my career. So I did commercial roles, so selling, getting out, talking to people, strategy roles, kind of both at a macro strategy of what should a company like BAE do, but then also in certain areas, what do we think the answer is? Who do we go and talk to at our customer to start to see if we're correct? And a lot of project management as well. So kind of centered in on, I kind of focused in my early career on project management, engineering design, commercial and strategy. And that was quite a good platform for the next part of my career.
I'll just take you to your last role at BAE Systems, and that
Yeah.
was a strategy manager for oil and gas. So you actually made it into oil and gas.
I did, yeah. That was a really enjoyable time. It was BAE. There was a bit of work done which said at the time, it's so far out of date, I could probably share this, that if they won every single tender they expected to come up, which obviously isn't going to happen anyway, it still probably wasn't enough to support the size of business they were and wanted to stay. So we set up, myself and a few others set up consultancies in kind of adjacent industries. So BAE is typically aerospace, defence, complex engineering projects. And one of the industries we looked at was oil and gas. So it's like, well, hang on, they're doing offshore, they're building very complex things. We take a different approach. Is it worth someone going to explore that market, learn all about it, and see can some of our technologies or processes be of use to them? So I voyaged out into the weird and wonderful world of oil and gas, knowing nothing, well, literally no background, and obviously started where you'd start, went to a few conferences, learnt a bit, and quite quickly realised there were certain areas where we could help. But yeah, it was, as a development experience, that was great. Just consultancy, I don't know if you've ever done it personally. You kind of get out there, you have to pay for your own bills in effect. So even though you're in a big company, you've got to bring in enough money to justify you staying on, keep your utilisation high. But you're also learning about a completely new area and thinking, how can I apply this? So it's almost like a mini business. So it was a really good role. That's how I came into contact with oil and gas, and BP were one of my clients. And they, after a while, I said, I'm thinking of leaving. And they said, well, we might have some roles. And that's how I came into oil and gas proper. So 2010.
Yes. So in 2010, you did join BP, again, where you had several roles over the next 9 years. Do you want to take us through those?
Yeah, the first role was, well, first of all, before I joined, it was quite a tense time because I'd handed in my notice. My wife was heavily pregnant with our first child, and then the Macondo disaster happened. So I was kind of, is there actually a company to go to? This is awful. I was just seeing what the media was saying. Is it somewhere I want to go and work? And actually, obviously, BP pulled through, but I got to have some good discussions with the people that would be hiring me. And actually, for the role I was going into, it was never good timing, but the role I was going into was focused on plant reliability and asset integrity. So actually, there was more demand for what I'd be going into than there maybe would have been in the normal order of events. So yeah, went in, and that first role was looking at, so it's about the closest I've got to using my chemistry professionally. I was looking at mainly production chemistry and how you make sure across BP's entire upstream portfolio, how you make sure that you're delivering enough of the right chemicals to the right location to mitigate whatever the risk you're trying to mitigate is. So corrosion would be a good example. In oil and gas, you might get internal corrosion, you use chemical barriers. If you're injecting under deep water, how do you know those barriers are effective without doing a full inspection of the pipeline or the flow line? So yeah, it was all about that involved my chemistry, and it was quite good. Project was quite successful, so we ended up upgrading or altering either the facilities or the workflows at about 40 producing assets. So really good way to get to understand the scale and size of a company like BP. So I got to travel the world, visit the people managing some of those facilities. So that was really cool. And then in 2013, so after that been going for 3 years, an opportunity came up to, it's kind of my dream job, but not the dream job I articulated earlier. Whatever BP's kind of most promising or most valuable technologies were, I'd get to go and help whoever made the initial invention bring that through, kind of from concept to product, if you like. So I was working across all parts of BP. I was working for Air BP on refueling, no prior experience of that, but how do you optimize refueling? I was working on enhanced oil recovery chemicals, for example. But one of the other technologies I was working on was called Cheetah, and that's now what Stryde. So my journey on the technology, which is now Stryde, started way back in 2013, believe it or not. So yeah, it was a really, really good fun role. I was, for a period, kind of supporting several technologies, but Cheetah over time won my heart, and that's where I started spending more and more of my time.
Moment.
Yeah, who's this?
It's the dog. Right, coming up. Oh, up you go.
I think the dog should join us.
She goes out with the dog walker every day, and every day when she comes back, she has to race up and jump on my knee. There you go. This is Rosie.
Hello, Rosie. I've got a dog called Lola, but she's not as doggy. She's a Chihuahua. So I walk her at lunch every day, but she only needs about 20 minutes, then she gets knackered. So yeah.
She's part collie, so it's very energetic. Go on, off you go. Right.
You should leave that bit in when you do the final.
Oh dear. Right, so where do we get to? So after your time at BP, you've mentioned it there, Cheetah, which later became Stryde. You joined Stryde proper in 2019. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so that's obviously the thing I'm most proud of in my career so far. I say obviously, it is the thing I'm most proud of. Cheetah was a joint development project between BP. So it started off just BP in 2013. Then we partnered with Schlumberger in 2015 and Rosneft in early 2016. And it was a joint development project, and we got to the point the technology was looking pretty good. It wasn't quite commercial, but it had promise. Towards the end of that time frame, we did this is as BP, we did at the time we broke the land seismic trace density record with ADNOC. And that project looked good. There were still refinements we needed to happen, but technically things were looking promising. But that coincided with Schlumberger exiting the seismic acquisition and acquisition technology market. So we were left with a really promising technology, not quite there, but getting close to commercial, and no route to market. So I went to BP. He'd set up something called Launchpad, which was a technology accelerator program they created, and said, look, you know all about this technology because you part own it, and we've been working on it for a while. Why don't we try creating a company out of it? Obviously, it was a bit more complex than this, but I made them a pitch. Went through about 6 weeks of the time they called a boot camp, so quite kind of intensive. So here's where you are. What's your business plan? How are you going to bring this to market? And anyway, we got through that. They said yes. So in August 2019, Stryde was incorporated. I was the first employee in October 2019, I think, 1st of October. And since then, we've grown a lot. So we've now got more nodes in the market than anyone else. So on land. So in terms of land seismic nodes, we're well past 800,000. I think we'll hit 1 million in the next month or two. So we've kind of gone from startup, albeit startup in a big corporate, through to the largest land nodal provider globally by volume. I think others have higher revenue, and that journey's been just amazing. Amazing fun for me and the team, but also an amazing learning experience for all of us as well. So, yeah, stepping out for anyone listening who's thinking of stepping out. I'd say it's well worth doing it. I think even if a year in things have gone really badly, I'd have still learned so much that it's worth doing that step out, try your own company model at some stage in your career. And yeah, it's obviously right at the start, it was suddenly you've got a load of money and it's just me. So kind of early on, you've got challenges like, right, I need to grow a team. How do I go and attract the right talent, the right potential? Then quite soon we had to set up a whole new supply chain. So we're setting up a whole new supply chain from scratch. And things were going well, and then COVID hit, and that was a very unusual time to launch a startup. Seismic, as you'll know, largely largely shut down. What we noticed quite early was oil and gas seismic had shut down, but renewables hadn't. So there were still renewables projects going on. And that kind of led us down interesting paths. So I'm quite passionate about renewables and always wanted to do something in that space. So we'd always planned to do a renewables version of our technology, but kind of the commercial impact of COVID, so it's a horrible time, obviously, but it meant the only way to generate revenue is actually start working in these industries which are still doing seismic, because oil and gas seismic is largely ground to hold. So that led us to create what we call our nimble system. So we've got different scales of system. And the nimble system, we'd always considered doing something like this, but our full scale system, which we started with, is kind of suitable for mega oil and gas projects. It's not suitable for 5,000 nodes to explore for hydrogen or to look for geothermal energy. So we kind of quite quickly created and launched with that smaller product, and actually it's probably our best selling one so far. So it took us on technology wise, it took us in an interesting direction. And yeah, looking back, I mean, it's been a hell of a journey. You don't often get to sit there and reflect, but it's about 55 people, worked in almost 60 countries globally. And yeah, as I said, approaching 1 million nodes sold to customers, which is pretty huge. So yeah, very proud of that time and that journey.
So you've got a very technical background. You've got a PhD in chemistry. You obviously love the technical side. Do you miss being able to get hands-on on that, being the CEO?
I do. Yeah, I often we just our previous CTO just retired, Camille Lapierre, and I often joke with her like she's got the best job in the company. That's the job if I knew what I knew now, and I wouldn't be capable of it, but that's the most fun job. So yeah, I do. I still stay very much in touch with all the technologies, and I get enough. The team are very good with me. They'll make enough time to talk me through where they are and listen, and they've probably already considered what I say. But I get that level. But yeah, I don't get to get deep down and technical anymore, and I do miss it. That's probably the one part of a CEO role that I miss the most, I think. Otherwise, I mean, everyone's different, but the things I've always loved, I like meeting prospective customers and listening to them and seeing, can we help them? I still get a lot of that, but I also love creating new technologies, and that's the bit I've had to give up. Good question, though.
So I think I know the answer to this, but which has been your favorite role and why?
I think this role, just the chance to create a whole new company from scratch is so cool, and yeah, unmatched by anything else I've done. And it's often things you don't think of. Like I'd only worked in big corporates, as we've covered earlier. So things like values, I used to hate corporate values, because someone would say to you, "Here's a mug with 4 words on. This is how you behave now because you work for us." And yet I found myself doing something similar in Stryde, but the journey to it made it much more fun. So when you start a new company, like, well, we need to have values because they're important, and we want people to know who they're working with or who they're coming to join. But the way we did it there, and obviously it only works for a startup, there's about 30 of us at the time. We just had a day, I think it was mainly virtual like this, but talking to everyone, what kind of company do you want to be? What do we value? And quite quickly honed in on the company values. And it felt so different because it's not me saying these are our values or a big corporate saying these are our values. It was us coming up with them. And to this day, we haven't changed them. So yeah, in ways you wouldn't expect, it's good fun. The whole coming up with a new name for the company and the image, that was fantastic. It's something I hadn't done before. So the kind of branding, yeah, just lots and lots of new experiences. It's been really good fun. Even to today, so we're over 5 years in, you still never quite know what each day is going to look like when you start. Bit of roller coaster, generally trending up, but yeah, there's always the occasional, this didn't go quite as we planned, and you get to do some damage control. But yeah, very exciting and ever challenging. And I think the thing that's made it so good is the team we've managed to attract. Like, we've managed to get really capable people, but also really nice people, and that's made a huge difference. So we've got a very, very good team. Everyone's kind of world class or very close in their area, but actually beyond that, everyone gets on, and even when you've got the usual kind of arguments between different teams, it's done in a very respectful way. So it's a nice group we've got together, and yeah, we continue to grow.
So if you could change one thing about your current role, what would it be?
That's a tough question, because I probably could change it now. I like most of it. I think there's some boring answers, like less travel would be nice, just 'cause I've got a young family. There's nothing I don't particularly like. So I guess jumping back to where we were before, I'd love to have a bit more time to think about technology. That's the cop-out answer. But yeah, I genuinely enjoy it so much and enjoy all aspects that there isn't much I would change at all, other than freeing up a bit more time to spend more time in the areas I'm personally more passionate about.
Do you enjoy getting out to conferences to see what everybody else is doing?
I love conferences, but more to meet the people. I found in recent conferences in our industry, there aren't that many new products really. So I remember Shearwater releasing Pearl, and that was quite cool, but there haven't been that many, oh wow, releases. So I love conferences, but less for the reason you articulated. So obviously I go around and I'm curious, but I've noticed the last few years there haven't been any or many game-changing technologies. It's always we've added this feature or we've done something incremental or we're rebranding, which is interesting to learn about, but it's not, yeah. I think we're still, I'm hoping, well, obviously I know what Stryde are working on, but I'm hoping there's a few more kind of game-changing inventions coming to the industry soon, more generally. But yeah, I do love conferences, as you'll know, because I see you often at the same ones. They're exhausting, but exhausting in a good way. So I love meeting old friends, meeting new people, learning what everyone's doing. But yeah, my one moan at the moment is there's not enough new stuff coming out.
So you've mentioned that there will be game changers in the future. Do you think
Yeah.
AI will change the industry?
I think it'll have an impact on the industry, and it's already some of my customers are using it in clever ways. So I think it will influence what we do. To what extent it will ultimately change the industry, I don't know. I think we're a long way from people seem to target, say, processing, and it's not my area of expertise, but I think we're a long way from saying to a computer, here's a data set, you go and process it. Because I think there's so much skill that processors use and experience, it's quite hard to train an AI to repeat that. But definitely there's areas where it will either make things quicker or alter how we do things. And with time, it could transform things a lot more. But I still think a lot of the AI I read about is trying to tackle in our industry, is trying to tackle a challenge which to me is 10 years away, and there's probably some simpler tasks we could solve now which would deliver immediate value. As an aside, I often find that in technology, and certainly when I was in my corporate roles, everyone's always striving for that big leap, which is good, but then they often overlook the simple, let's use what's out there now in a different way to get quite big value now. And that's often an area I notice people are missing. So, yeah.
So where has been your favorite place to visit for work?
Good question. There's lots I've liked at different times. I really liked Norway when I was early on. So when I was with BAE, visiting Norway was a really lovely place. Obviously, the weather can be a challenge depending on what time of year you go, but really enjoyed it there. Further afoot, really enjoyed my time in Abu Dhabi. So yeah, when I've been there, that's been nice. Feels authentic, but there's lots to do, lots to see. Generally, though, I'm quite an easy traveler. It's rare I go somewhere and go, that's terrible. And I can't think of many places I've been on business where I think that's terrible. Yeah, I do think it's a nice, both my job now, but my prior careers. I think anyone in a kind of customer facing role, a big positive is you do get to go to new places. The downside is you often don't get time to go and explore them properly. But yeah, I've pretty much enjoyed everywhere I've been, which again is quite a boring answer. But yeah.
So do you still get a buzz out of completing a deal, getting a client to sign up?
I do, yeah. It's often not me doing it now. In fact, typically it's not. But I do still get that buzz. And what I've noticed is the buzz is not necessarily the dollar value which creates the buzz. Like I get as much, if not more, buzz out of some of the low value, cool projects we do. Like good examples in recent years, we've worked with Oxford University to track how elephants communicate and how they move, and like things like that, just advancing science. The dollar value is tiny for us, but I get a big buzz out of something like that, or a geothermal project, which is still valuable, but not the same as large oil and gas projects, as I do out of the big projects. So yeah, I do definitely get that buzz. Like I'm always very happy when we complete a deal. The level of buzz isn't directly aligned with the dollar value. is an odd observation I've got. I'm not sure that's good or bad given my position, but yeah. And I'm certainly, and as a company, I am still very passionate about renewables. I think there's a lot we can do there, which, particularly in the UK, I feel like we're lagging way behind our near neighbours, for example. So we're coming up to, I think, our 50th geothermal survey. The majority of those are in Europe, and we've done one in the UK or two in the UK so far. And it kind of, I feel like in the UK we can be making a much bigger difference, but there's just not. I think it's more the government, and previous governments haven't yet laid out a clear path to industry to say there's potential for this in the UK, and here's how you can tap into it. Whereas in other, if I take the EU and geothermal, they've got a range of schemes to kind of de-risk it for an investor. We're lacking that and clear guidelines. So I think there's still lots to do. I'd like to do more in the UK.
So what motivates or drives you?
That's a good question. I've always been quite competitive by nature, so not wanting to lose is one aspect. I think I am quite a people person, so my team and my customers being happy is quite important to me. But then more generally, I'm deep into this Stryde journey 5 years in. Just there's certain mental milestones, like when we deliver our millionth node, that to me will be a really cool milestone. So partly it's the core values, so wanting people to be enjoying what they're doing and happy, and our customers being happy, being competitive. So I want to win, but then also just hitting those next steps on the journey. I've kind of got quite a clear view of where I'd like us to go, and the team have bought into it. So every time we hit one of those, we celebrate. So yeah.
Will you create a small gold node on a plinth for that?
Well, we've already done it for 250 and 500. We haven't yet given 750,000, so we're behind. We will make a golden node, I'm sure. In fact, we probably need to do something better since we've already done golden. Yeah. A platinum-looking node. We will do it. It's actually interesting, because we've signed contracts, so we know we're delivering it roughly when we're delivering it. I'm not sure who it will be, so it'll depend when customers take their order. But yes, whoever gets the millionth node will get a shiny node to mark the occasion.
So if you could go back and give yourself some advice at the start of your career, what would it be?
Right at the start, I would say take those big risks early. So I did find at stages, so I've now got a wife and 2 children. When we set up Stryde, that was a harder risk to come to terms with, because if it went badly, I've still got a wife and 2 kids and no way to pay the bills. So if I was going back earlier, I'd say do some riskier things earlier when you've got less assets, to be honest. So if say you're a student and you finish your degree, yes, you've got some debts from your student loans probably, but other than that, you've probably not got many assets. So that's when I'd go out and try and do something bold, because if it goes wrong, the cost of failure isn't as high as if you do it later in life. So make some bolder decisions earlier. I've also, so as we talked through my career path, it's quite random. It's how random and lots of luck stroke opportunities which I've cashed in on. I think it's great. Like when I meet people who are set on what they want to do, I think that's fantastic. But if you're not naturally one of those people, I don't think there's anything wrong with seeing where the world takes you, and then when you spot that good opportunity, going for it. And that's kind of that's the way my career's developed. So clearly, I was going to be a teacher in chemistry. I've ended up being a CEO of a seismic technology company. That's not a mapped career path, but it's one I've enjoyed. And there's been 2 or 3 pivotal moments like that strategy role at BAE you mentioned, where I thought, yeah, that sounds fun. I'll develop. I'll learn something new. Let's go for it. And I think take those jumps, those leaps of faith, because generally they end up, worst case, it might be a failure, but you'll have learned something completely new. And generally you expect it to be better than that. So yeah, be prepared to kind of pivot and try something a bit different and learn from it.
So any regrets?
I'd still love to try teaching at one stage, but I doubt that will ever happen now. You never know. No, generally not. I think maybe both with BA and BP, towards the end of my time there, I realised it was the end of my time there, as in I hit the point where I wasn't learning as much and developing. And I think once you hit that point, I'd encourage people to either move to another role in that organisation or leave. So kind of, and I think with both of those companies, I probably could have left a year or two earlier and didn't. So I think if you're ever in that kind of position, I would think hard about what you're doing, but then make that move earlier. So actually a friend of mine wrote a book on that very topic called The Corporate Escapologist. And it's worth reading if anyone's in that mindset. It's 99p or something on Amazon on a Kindle. But yeah, it's a whole how to assess, is it time for you to move your corporate? What does, there's obviously lots of pros and cons in corporates. There's huge amounts of roles you can take in different areas. You after a while, you've got job security. How do you rank that against giving all that up and going to try something completely different? And I wish that book had been available when I was making those decisions myself. So, yeah.
So what was the last book you read?
The last book I read, I read lots of sci-fi, and I often can't remember the names, so I read them just before I'm going to bed. Last serious book I read, actually that Corporate Escapologist was the last book I fully read, even though it wasn't applicable to me. I read it just because it was quite thought-provoking, and there's some references in there because I'd worked with this person. There were some bits where an average reader wouldn't pick it up, and I was able to go, this is what this chap's talking about. So that's it. I've been sent another one by someone on, it's got a swear word in it, so I won't say, but it's How to Correct Your Golf Swing with a swear word inserted in there. And so that's more a kind of social or a personal read. I love my golf, as you can, behind me is a golf simulator, which I built in my midlife crisis when I was about 30. And yeah, I'm still terrible at golf. So reading that is quite interesting. But I'm only just starting.
So thinking back to your time at BAE and BP, have you any unfinished business on a project? Anything that you worked on that you saw the start of, but never found out how it finished?
Well, at BAE, I wouldn't necessarily know because a lot of them were kind of, security clearance type projects. But no, I in that area, ethically, defence and aerospace wasn't where I wanted to work anyway. So no unfinished business there. I never worked on any. This is how I got comfortable with it. I never worked on anything which directly hurts people. So it was more like communication systems. I did get offered, the first job they offered me after my software testing was a chemist dream, but I turned it down for ethical reasons. So it was using chemistry to design new types of explosion for different purposes. So not necessarily just blowing things up, but explosions which will camouflage something to a radar, etc. And there was this area in Wales where they've got about 10 square miles where you just create these new chemicals, blow them up and monitor. And as a chemist, that's kind of, a lot of chemists I like chemistry because of colours and bangs and flashes. I was very simple-minded. That would have been good fun, but I turned it down. Otherwise, no unfinished business there. BP, no, I think there were a few areas where I think I'd recommend something and they didn't go that direction, and often it turned out I was right, but it's too late at that point, so I can't call it unfinished business. There were some technologies where I think we proved it worked, and operators, so upstream products can be quite hard because you need all the operators to agree. So like there was an example, I won't go into too much detail, but there was an example of technology where it had huge potential value. We proved it would work, did a field trial, etc. And then it turned out that the other operator at this site had a similar technology they were working on. And so you kind of, had you both spoken to the site, you could have gone, well, just one of us do this, or we'll try both and we'll pick the best. But often politics interferes with what's adopted in big operators. So yeah, that's as close as I got to with unfinished business in BP. And with Stryde, still definitely lots of unfinished business, but that's the future.
So how's your seismic knowledge come along working for Stryde? Do you think you could process some seismic data?
I could definitely not process some seismic data, but luckily I've got lots of people who could. It's interesting because I didn't know very much about seismic at all until 2013. So it was literally the point I got interested in seismic is when someone, a guy called Jack Busker, had invented the sensor, or a sensor similar to what we now use in Stryde. And that's when I first got into contact with seismic. So now I'd say I know enough I can talk seismic. I can have a reasonably good seismic conversation. I could look at a processed image and roughly understand where there's issues and what's there. But I couldn't process data myself. But
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, that's bringing us to the end. So it's on to my final question. If you could play any golf course in the world, what would it be?
That is a very good final question. Probably Pebble Beach, partly because I was watching it last night and it always looks stunning, and it's also doable. So yeah, I think Pebble Beach. How about you? Are you a golfer?
I'm an enthusiastic amateur.
Yeah, well, I'm probably still in that phase, even though I've stupidly built a golf simulator. But is there a golf course you would pick, putting you on the spot at the end?
Oh, I mean, I'd live next to Reigate Hill Golf Course,
Yeah.
and walk the dog, so I just enjoy getting out there.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Pebble Beach is my that I need to do. It's a bucket list item. So.
Excellent. Well, it just leaves me to say thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
And likewise, it's been a good discussion. Thank you very much.